All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And thank you again for joining in on this webinar on your Wednesday afternoon. Um, I'm just going to start by introducing myself. Rachel Higginbotham. I'm a sleep physician and a psychiatrist, and I am now a sleep coach. Coming to you today as a coach for educational purposes. So if you have a medical need, make sure you ask your own physician. My training's been all over the country. I did my undergraduate and medical school at Duke and got a master's in public health at UNC in Chapel Hill. Did my psychiatry training at a Harvard hospital, Cambridge Hospital in Boston, and then welcome Les. And then I did my sleep fellowship out in Oregon at Oregon Health Sleep Sciences University, OHSU. And I've been practicing sleep medicine for about 17 years, and I've been a certified coach for about 3 years. I live in New Hampshire, and I grew up in Austin, Texas. I have three girls, I'm married, and I have two very adorable Labradoodles at home. So that's just a little bit about me. To give you a sense about today's webinar, I would love to get to know you all a little bit. And as we go through this, I'm going to throw out some questions. And if you feel comfortable, you can use your chat to respond if you'd like. If you're not familiar with Zoom, there's a little icon on the bottom of your screen that should say chat, and you can type questions in there or answers to questions that I throw out. So feel free to use that. At the end of the webinar, there will be time for question and answer, and I'll get to as many of your questions as I can. There will be a replay available tomorrow, so if you have to leave early or you want to go back and review something, you can watch this again. But I would encourage you to stay until the end, and you'll have a chance to win a free one-on-one coaching session with me. Um, and as I said, this webinar is for educational purposes. Okay, so let's start with the first question. So tell me in the chat if you're comfortable, any of these things. So A, are you exhausted but you can't fall asleep at bedtime? B, do you wake up in the middle of the night and maybe you can't get back to sleep? C, your mind starts racing the minute you close your eyes. Or D, you're juggling a whole lot, work, maybe family, life, and you just want to feel rested again. So if you're comfortable, maybe just jot in the chat, are you A, B, C, D? I have felt all of these before in my life for sure. Um, if you want to jot it down, I'd love to hear kind of where people are coming from at this point. So Nancy said B, B for waking up in the middle of the night, having a hard time getting back to sleep. Super, super common. So these can be, symptoms of poor sleep, and at different times in your life, you can experience one or more, all of these reflections of poor sleep. So you're not alone. There's lots and lots of people, lots and lots of women who experience all of these, and you're in the right place today to try to work on that. And I want to tell you that good sleep really is possible. Your body, just as it is designed to sleep. And with the right approach, rest really can become easier for you again. So, what you're going to walk away from this webinar with today is a new way of thinking about sleep that helps you let go of the nightly struggle. I'm going to help give you some calming practices you can use tonight to quiet your busy mind. And you're going to walk away with an understanding of how to support your natural biorhythms so that sleep can come more easily for you. So we're going to be talking about three pillars for restful nights. So the first pillar is letting go of outcome. The second pillar is downshifting the nervous system. And the third pillar is supporting our own biorhythms. Okay, so we're going to start with pillar one. This is about letting go. Letting go is hard to do, but there's a few things we need to try to let go of when we're working with our sleep. So we want to try to let go of trying to sleep. And if you've ever had the experience of trying to sleep, you probably know the harder you try, the harder it is to sleep, which is is really different than other things in life. We can try very hard to learn an instrument, and the more effort we put into it, usually the better we become. Or we can try really hard to study for a test, and usually the more effort we put into that, the better we're going to do on the test. But sleep is really not like that, and we're going to talk about that a little more in a minute. Um, the other thing is letting go of outcome of the night. So we can start to count hours or look at the clock and see how much time has passed since we started trying to sleep. And we're looking at outcomes a lot of times, like in quantity, or people wear Apple Watches or other devices and start to look at data. And so we start to become hyper focused on the outcome of the night. And this is another thing that we got to really let go of, because the more hyper focus we put on our sleep, actually the harder it is to sleep, because we're kind of activating ourselves, we're causing anxiety and distress. And then another piece that we have to really look at and try to let go of is fear of the next day, of consequences of the next day. So a lot of what happens at night is that we become fearful of what the next day is going to hold for us, given that we're not sleeping at 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe. So unfortunately, that fear is going to trigger anxiety, and as we're trying to fall asleep and we're anxious about the next day, it almost becomes impossible to sleep. So letting go doesn't mean giving up. I will kind of point that out. Because there is so much we can do to improve our sleep. And this is why I'm in this field, and this is why I'm creating resources for women, because there is really so much we can do. But what I'm talking about is surrendering to this internal battle we can have going on over our sleep. So it's not giving up, it's just sort of surrendering to the tension about it. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the self-perpetuating insomnia cycle. So, insomnia sort of begets insomnia. The more insomnia you have and the more anxious you become about it, the more insomnia you have. Because worrying about sleep activates the brain. When we worry, the brain wakes up. It becomes more alert, more attentive, hypervigilant. And then that activation leads to racing thoughts and tension in our body. And then this tension in our body and all the racing thoughts make it harder to fall asleep or stay asleep. And then having sleepless nights creates more stress, and the cycle repeats. So maybe, you go to bed thinking about, let's start here on the third little arrow here. Maybe you go to bed, you had a tough day. You have a lot of thoughts in your mind, a lot of body tension. Your nervous system is kind of activated, so then you can't sleep. Well, now you can't sleep. So maybe now you start to worry about your lack of sleep. What does that mean for the next day? What does that mean for your health? All these things we think about. So the more we worry about not sleeping, then now we're having racing thoughts and having body tension about not sleeping. Now our nervous system is even more activated. And now we have more insomnia, more sleeplessness, or poor sleep. Some people aren't actually totally awake, but they just have poor quality of sleep. And so you can kind of see how this cycle just goes around and around and around and around. And what can start out as like a seemingly innocuous reason why we can't sleep can become a whole issue and a chronic problem. Okay, so the truth about sleep: sleep can't be forced, and effort to sleep makes it harder. The other piece that I want you to remember is that your body really does already know how to sleep. It has that biorhythm, it has the chemistry, it knows how to do it. And rest really becomes much more possible when we stop battling and we allow sleep to come. So let's talk a little bit more about why effort backfires. So the harder we try to make sleep happen, the more alert we feel. Putting effort into something signals the brain to stay awake instead of letting go. So forcing sleep creates a pressure. And pressure, like if someone's like standing over you you need to get a project done at work, this pressure is going to fuel anxiety, and the anxiety and fuels then the insomnia. And it's a vicious cycle. So, what do we do instead? Well, we want to lean towards self-compassion. And the first thing you can just say is like, this is hard. You might think about what you would say to a friend. What would you say to a friend who was struggling for sleep? That sounds really hard. So being compassionate, and saying, this is really hard, and then trying to bring in some acceptance and some calm. But it's okay. My body knows how to rest. This will pass. So that's a very different mindset and thought than the thoughts that are more typical with people who have trouble sleeping. And, thoughts that are based in frustration and anxiety sound like, why can't I just sleep? Something must be wrong with me. Things are going to go horribly tomorrow. People start to catastrophize. So we really have to look at shifting our inner dialogue to help release this pressure. And once we release the pressure, then our nervous system can go from a state of fight or flight and activation to a state of rest and relaxation, which is where sleep can come in. So, if you brought a journal with you or pad of paper or something, this may be a point where you might want to jot down some notes. So things you can try tonight. So try starting to release the pressure to measure your sleep success by your hours slept. So don't keep tracking how many hours you're sleeping. Just maybe focus on the fact that you're trying to sleep well, that you got some rest, and don't keep measuring data if you're someone that does that. So again, instead, focus on your body and that your body had a chance to rest. And then start to trust that sleep is built into your own biology, your own brain, your own body. And start to tell yourself self-compassionate words like, this is hard, but this is okay. My body knows how to rest. This will pass. Oh, went the wrong way. Okay, so we're going to move on to pillar number 2, which is downshifting our nervous system. So, stress keeps us awake, and there's probably nobody on this call that is immune to stress. We all live in a world where just watching or reading the news is going to bring about stress. Work can be very stressful. Juggling all the roles and responsibilities we have can be very stressful. So we all have stress, and stress is a huge reason why people struggle with sleep. Stress activates our sympathetic nervous system, which is our kind of go system. It's also known as the fight, flight, or freeze system. You might have heard it referred to as that. Um, and when you're in this state, you have racing thoughts, you have muscle tension, you have adrenaline in your body, and the brain is alert because it is on watch. And to achieve sleep, you really have to downshift into your rest system, which is also called the parasympathetic system. So, one thing to keep in mind is that, like a car, we can't go from 60 miles an hour to a full stop immediately. And if you're driving, you're on the highway, you're going really fast, we really have to downshift, slow down, and ease into a stop. Can't just slam on the brakes. And it's the same with our brain and our nervous system. Turning off this on system that we depend on during the day takes some time and it takes some intention. So, one thing that I really advocate for people to do is to try to download your brain earlier in the evening to prevent racing thoughts. So, at least an hour before bed, if not more, take your to-do list, and hopefully you have a list that's written down, because if you're not writing down your to-dos, they're probably popcorn bouncing in your head. So it's really helpful to have all your to-dos in one list and take a planner, whether it's electronic or paper. I actually really like paper planners and use one myself, and try to get my clients to as well if they aren't, because I think there's something that's helpful about writing that takes a lot of the swirl in our head and puts it on paper in a way that's different than doing electronically. But some people have figured out electronic planners, and that's okay too. So, take your to-do list, plan out your next day. What do you need to do? Who needs picking up when? When are you going to make meals? When do you have to be at work? And add in, almost more importantly than all those to-dos, add in your self-care. Where are you going to exercise? Where are you going to meet up with a friend? What do you have time to do tomorrow? I know if I don't write down something as simple as like take a walk, go for a run, do yoga, and I find a time in my schedule to do that, I often just skip it. So I might say, okay, I get home at 4:30. I've got an hour before I have to pick up my daughter. I'm going to go for a run, in those 45 minutes before I have to go get her. Otherwise, I'd probably just come in the house and start piddling around, getting ready for dinner or whatever. So I really encourage people to write almost everything you want to do the next day down on paper and prioritize those things that are really important, like self-care and your responsibilities, obviously, but you are important too. So put the self-care in there. Then take from your to-do list. What can you realistically get done the next day from your to-do list? It's probably not all 57 things. Maybe it's 5 or 6 things. And you can even plan when you're going to do that to do. When are you gonna write the checks for the bills? Nobody does checks anymore, but not many people. But add it into your calendar so that you don't feel like you have to do all 57 things tomorrow, but you've got the 5 or 6 that really need to get done tomorrow kind of planned out. And this can really help with racing thoughts at night. And it's like putting a little bookmark in your day. So you put the bookmark in, things are settled, you close the planner and put it away till the next day. And when your mind starts going at night and you're thinking and strategizing, you can say, no, I've already done that. I've already planned out what really needs to get done tomorrow. I can get back to that tomorrow. Okay, so think about doing that. And then the other thing is really finding a way to release your stress. And everybody has a different proclivity to what works, what feels right. So pick something that you think you will actually use, or maybe play around with different things and see what might be a good relaxation strategy for you. Meditation is amazing. I love meditation. I wish I did it every day. The days I do it, I am so glad I do it. It like changes my whole world perspective almost. Um, so, but not everybody likes it. And there's lots of kinds of meditations. Not everybody likes all the different kinds. So you could play around with different types of meditations, looking at apps. Insight Timer is a great app, has a lot of free, not just a lot, probably like thousands of free meditations that are guided, and you can learn a lot from that. Find a voice you like, find a teacher you like, find a type of meditation you like. But meditation is not the only thing to do to sort of deal with tension and stress. A warm bath can be amazing. Gentle stretching or yoga, awesome. Perfect thing to do. Journaling, some people love to get their thoughts out of their mind onto paper and it really helps process. That's a beautiful thing to do. Reading a great book or curling up with your pets, all of these are great. There's no right way to relax. The important thing is setting aside some time, and it doesn't have to be a massive amount of time. It can be 10 or 15 minutes. I would do it in the last hour before bed, but just set some time for yourself to intentionally wind down. Okay, so think about what you are already using or what you would like to try to use, or what few things you think might work for you. Okay, so tonight, see what you can do to downshift. Think of yourself again as a car. You're trying to downshift into lower gears until you can come to a full stop. Nice, easeful transition. So at least an hour before bed, see if you can use a planner to mentally download all the to-dos and all the planning and strategizing you have to do for the upcoming day. And then in the hour leading up to bedtime, find 15 minutes just for yourself to do something quiet, something relaxing, where you're bringing down your nervous system. Okay, so maybe take a moment now if you have the journal or notebook with you right now to just jot down what you'd like to do. what you'd like to do tonight, so that by the end of this webinar, you have a small list. I don't want to make an overwhelming list, but a small list of shifts you'd like to make, things you'd like to do differently to support your sleep. Okay, so on to the third pillar. The third pillar is about supporting our own biorhythms, your own biochemistry in your brain and your body, your own brain's ability to sleep. Okay, so why do biorhythms matter? Well, sleep follows your body's internal clock, also known as your circadian rhythm. And there's actually this little red dot here represents a nucleus in the brain that is actually literally the biologic clock, or the main one. There's actually lots of biologic clocks all over your body, actually in every cell we're finding now. But the main um, control center, I guess you could call it, is in the brain here. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And it gets information directly from the eye down this little path here. It's a nerve. And if it gets a signal of light to the eye from sun or a screen, TV, what have you, it sends an inhibitory signal. So light coming in the eye sends a signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus that it's daytime, and it inhibits any further activation of these pathways behind it. Okay? On the other hand, if darkness, dimness, darkness, twilight, just lower light, if that is coming in the eye and the signal of darker, doesn't have to be completely dark, but darkness or twilight, kind of lower light, if that's coming in the eye, that signal travels down the optic nerve to our little suprachiasmatic nucleus, and then it sends on signaling through this little complicated pathway here to another gland called the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is a little gland that secretes a number of things, but one of the things it secretes is melatonin. And this is just like the melatonin you buy at CVS or Target, but it's your own, obviously, biologically made melatonin. And it's our sleep-inducing hormones, very important for sleep. So light and dark really support this clock kind of knowing what to do and secreting the right hormones and chemicals to support sleep. So you might imagine that we are sabotaging our circadian rhythm with various forms of light. I mean, first of all, we live in a world where you could be in bright light all day long, 24 hours a day, and some people are, especially living in the city. There's light coming in the windows at all times unless you have great light blocking curtains. But in addition to just having access to light all the time, we now have screens of all sorts. And we're just sending, I'm going to go back a slide, we're just sending this inhibitory message to the circadian rhythm, the biologic clock, that it's daytime. So we're kind of tricking the brain into not secreting melatonin by all this light coming in the eye. And unfortunately, the smaller the device, the closer we hold it to our face. So our phones we hold the closest to our face, and that is probably the worst thing we can do for our circadian rhythm. And it's probably the most commonly used late at night. Um, the iPads and Kindles are usually held a little further away, but those are a lot of light unless they're put on the paper settings. But even those have been shown to disrupt circadian rhythm. TVs across the room, less of an issue, but still emit a fair amount of light. So thinking about when we use electronics, really important so that we're not sabotaging our own circadian rhythm. Another way we sabotage our circadian rhythm is inconsistent sleep and wake schedules. So our circadian rhythm depends on regularity. So similar bedtime and wake time every day is going to keep your circadian rhythm happy. So if you've ever traveled across time zones, you know that traveling even from the East Coast to the West Coast, that 3 hour time change makes us a little nutty. Like it's hard to fall asleep. Well, coming back east, it's hard to fall asleep. When we get up, we feel kind of like over over sedated and nauseous and just unwell. And it takes like, 3 to 7 days to really get reacclimated and have our circadian rhythm adjust. Um, so if we, for example, sleep in on the weekend, so maybe we had a tough week, we were sleep deprived during the week, and then we sleep in 3 hours on the weekend, it's like traveling across three time zones. And if we do that Friday night into Saturday, Saturday night into Sunday, and then we try to get up at our regular time on Monday, it's like you just traveled across time zones and it's really disruptive to your circadian rhythm. It can make Mondays really tough. Caffeine is also another way we disrupt our biologic rhythms. Having caffeine too close to bedtime, I actually usually recommend at least 8 and if not 10 hours between your last caffeinated drink and bedtime because caffeine does stick around even after you don't feel its effects. So these are common ways that lots of people affect their circadian rhythm. We all do some of these things at some times, but there are things to think about and consider making some changes around so that your own biorhythms can do the work for you and help you sleep naturally. Okay, so here are some ways we can support our biorhythms. In the morning, light is great. If you can get 5 or 10 minutes outside soon after you wake up in natural sunlight, amazing. It's a little harder in the winter. I live in New Hampshire and it's kind of dark a lot during the winter, so it's harder to get that. But if you can, or you live in a sunny area, it's really helpful for your circadian rhythm to just know, okay, now we're starting in the 24 hours, and it just helps regulate that clock. Evening wind down, that's a time where we want to dim our lights, reduce the screens 2 hours before bedtime, at least 1 hour before bedtime to get rid of all that extraneous light. Let the dimness kind of help your own brain secrete its own melatonin and prepare for sleep. And then consistent sleep and wake times as much as possible. So knowing this is time to pull out your pad and paper again, or your pen and paper. Jot down what you might want to do to support your biorhythms going forward. Do you want to get outside first thing in the morning? Do you want to turn your phone and your electronics off at a certain time? Do you want to use different lights in your living room so it's not so bright? Maybe it's more dim, kind of representing what's going on outside, twilight. So write down. It really helps to make an intention when you want to make a change, a lifestyle change or behavior change, to make an intention and don't make it too lofty. Um, you know, you know, no light 4 hours before bedtime is probably not realistic. But if you think you could even do 30 minutes before bedtime without electronics, give yourself a realistic goal that you can start working on. And then the consistent sleep and wake time. So think through, do you have a consistent bedtime? Do you have a consistent wake time? And if you don't, maybe make an intention right now. What is a reasonable bedtime and wake time for yourself? What would you like to try to work toward? What do you want to do on the weekends or your days off when you don't have to get up? So just take a minute to write down what you would like to make an intention to do. And then check in with yourself. Each morning you can kind of check in on these intentions you've made and see how you're doing. So let's go back through the three pillars and you can look at what you've written down if you've been writing down and I want you to walk away with this webinar with some actual strategies that would be helpful for you. So let's go back to pillar one. That was all about letting go of the battle with sleep, finding some self-compassion and acceptance for things just as they are, not giving up, But knowing that the more we are anxious about our sleep, the more we worry about its consequences, the more we catastrophize, the worse the insomnia cycle can become. Okay. And then pillar two was identifying one calming practice to downshift your nervous system every night for at least 10 minutes. And we also talked about downloading your brain into a planner. If you feel like you're ready to do that, that would be another amazing one to write down as an intention. And then pillar three again, that was supporting your biorhythms, trying to get some light in the morning and dimness at night, trying to turn off electronics at a certain time and trying to be regular with your bedtime and your wake time. So maybe just highlight three. Which one thing of these three pillars would you like to, or sorry, which maybe identify one thing from each pillar that you really want to target as a goal and write it out for yourself. Okay, so I want to tell you, I hope so far what we've talked about has given you some hope that transforming your sleep is possible because it really is. When you shift these patterns that we've been talking about, you can have calmer nights. You can let go of this nightly struggle. You can have more energy and focus during the day. And you can start to have a sense of peace about your sleep instead of anxiety about it. So imagine if you are in this webinar, you have already tried a number of things for your sleep, and you're not alone in that either. So I invite you, if you want, to drop in the chat things that you've already tried. So A would be prescription medications, B, over-the-counter meds or supplements, C is good sleep hygiene rules, and D would be meditation or yoga. And I'm sure there's lots of other things, but if you want to drop in the chat, I'm just going to open the chat here and see if anybody wants to jot down any of the things that they've tried. And maybe it's all of them, A, B, C, D. All, okay, Nancy said all of them. So yeah, I think that's very common and it can start to feel really really desperate sometimes when you felt like you've tried everything and nothing's working. So I get that, and I see a lot of patients in my sleep clinic and clients in my sleep coaching practice who have tried a lot of things and feel pretty discouraged by the time they're talking to me. So you are definitely not alone. And let's talk a little bit about why some of these common approaches fall short. So, some of these things I really do believe in, like sleep hygiene and meditation and yoga, can be incredibly supportive of good sleep, but they're sometimes not the full solution. And let's see, sorry, Marge said all of them too. Yes. So, what is missing? Oh, and just to go back for a minute, medications and supplements, they have their place. And they can help temporarily, but it's unfortunately not going to teach your body how to sleep naturally. So it's kind of like taking pain medications for a broken leg, but not getting the surgery or whatever you need for the broken leg. It's going to cover up the symptoms, but it's not going to really solve the underlying issue or like a strep throat infection. You can take all the cough drops and herbal tea you want for your sore throat, but for some things like strep throat, you need an antibiotic to really address the underlying situation, help the body, normalize. So it's similar. Like medications and supplements can help in the short term, but in the long term, they don't really address the problem. So, what is missing? Maybe in some of these approaches that you've already tried. Um, I feel like that's what one thing that's missing are approaches that really address your nervous system and your mindset and that work with your natural rhythms and support. So sometimes people go and get a handout of sleep hygiene from their doctor, but there's not a lot of support and feedback and individual guidance. It is hard to make transformative changes alone, and a lot of times coaching can really help with that. And group coaching can be really a wonderful way of doing that because you're doing it alongside other women who are going through the same things. And it can feel like you're not alone, which is really important. So, I want to tell you about my coaching program that is going to be starting October 1st. It's called Roadmap to Rest. It's a 6 weeks sleep coaching program. And if you're feeling like some of the things we talked about or all the things we talked about today are hitting home for you, maybe they're intriguing and you want to learn more, you want to dig deeper for a true sleep transformation, or you feel like these sound like great concepts, but I really need some more support and guidance, and I want more proven strategies. I want to learn more. If you really want to understand the science behind your sleep, why we have insomnia, what happens in the brain, what happens when we sleep and when we don't sleep, if you're ready to learn how our mindset shifts can really change everything, this is a really huge one. The thoughts we have about sleep really impact how we can sleep in the future. And if you're ready to move beyond quick fixes into lasting rest, then this program could be great for you. What you'll learn in this 6 week program is how to break the cycle of poor sleep. So, finally understanding why insomnia keeps showing up for you and then how to interrupt it for good. You'll learn how to calm a racing mind, how to kind of shift out of that spiral of worry and pressure so that sleep can come more naturally, and how to just be kinder to yourself through this process. Self-compassion is huge, and moving from criticizing ourselves and being frustrated with ourselves to being compassionate and calm really make rest and sleep much more possible. And we talk a lot about living in a way that nourishes our sleep. Sleep and life are, it's like an infinity sign. The way we sleep at night affects our day. The way we live our days affects our sleep. So you can't really address sleep if you're not also addressing how you're living your life. So discovering how self-care and simple daily shifts can really reduce stress and set you up for restorative sleep as part of this 6 week program too. So I don't want to add to your to-do list because if you're like me, it's pretty busy. I'm pretty busy, so I've designed this to have some self-paced modules that you can watch or listen to during the week. Most of them are between 10 and 15 minutes, and there'll be a few a week, and you can just listen to them on your own time. And then once a week, we'll meet for a live group question and answer session. We'll do some coaching. We'll kind of bring all the concepts together from that week. And people can get support and individual guidance. I'll always record those sessions. So if you can't attend them live, there will be replays. And I'm offering email support between sessions. If you have a question that I can answer by email, you can just pop it over to me and you can feel like you've got someone in your back corner. If it's a bigger question, I'll save that question for the question and answer session where I can really talk it out. But either way, I'll try to answer all your questions and be there as a support as you're going through this. And if you decide this is for you and you want to enroll in the next 48 hours, I do have a bonus I will send to you. It's an evening reset workshop. So that would be something you'd get if you want to enroll in the next 48 hours. So if you're interested and you want to do this program together, the price is $597. Again, it includes the 6 weeks of self-paced modules, the live weekly question and answer and coaching sessions. It's going to be on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. and that's Eastern Standard Time, and I'm in New Hampshire. And you'll get the email support as well. Again, it starts October 1st, and you'll get a bonus of the reset workshop if you enroll in the next couple of days. Enrollment will close the day before the program begins, so you have some time. But here is the link to register. Actually, I'm going to put a link you can click in the chat if you want that. Hmm. Can do that. Well, I will do that in a minute. And this is a QR code, if anyone is savvy with that, that you can use to take a picture of, and it will take you to the registration link. I'm just going to take a little minute here to grab the link to put in the chat before we go on. And then we'll do Q&A. I am having trouble. Let's see. Okay. Probably see what I'm doing here. Oops. Just trying to copy the link. And I'll put it in the chat here. Okay. Hopefully you guys all got that. Let me get back to the slides here. Okay. So, it's time for question and answer. And actually, if you wouldn't mind putting in the chat, just put the word here, and then I'll know you're here till the end. And I will pick a name at random after the webinar, and I'll send you an email if you won the one-on-one session with me, and we can schedule that. So at this point, if you have any questions, please jot them in the chat. Okay. Thank you for putting in the chat here. I see that. And sometimes people are a little hesitant to write questions in the chat when we're just don't know each other very well. So I brought some questions that people have asked me in other webinars, and maybe these are some questions you have too. So I'll just kind of walk through some questions. It might spur some questions that you have. Okay, so I'm often asked why a program just for women, and I've had some men asked to be in my program, and I do say no. And the reason is I really feel like women have unique challenges in life that are different from most men, and I want to honor that, and I want to create a space where women feel comfortable asking questions. I think women in general in all women groups tend to participate more. But there's also some sensitive areas that I think women are more likely to ask about or contribute about if it's an all women's group. And one of the most obvious areas is hormones, and people's sleep can really shift within the month in our menstrual cycle with hormones. And then across our life, as we get to perimenopause and menopause, there are massive changes in sleep. And I'm 51 and I'm experiencing this right now. And it's really important. And I think those hormonal changes are getting more attention right now, just in general and in the media. And that's really wonderful. And I know that interface between the female hormonal system and sleep is really important to address. So that's one thing. And then I also just think the juggle that most women have is unique. And I think for women who choose to both work and have children, I think even if they have the most dedicated husbands, a lot of times they carry a different mental load than their partners. And I want to honor that too and address some of those pieces. So lots of reasons why this is an all women's program. And hopefully that's appealing because of the just many reasons, and also just the environment to participate, I think can feel really nice. Okay. Oh, I got a question in the chat. Let's see. It says, what is your advice or recommendation about getting out of bed if you're not asleep in 30 minutes? Getting out of bed, sitting up until sleepy and going back to bed and trying to fall back asleep. Yes. I do think this is really important, and this is called stimulus control, and it's very well studied. And I do think for most people, this is pretty critical, and for a few reasons. Number one, it's like a breaker switch. It just is like a real reset button. It's a chance to get out of this trying and trying. We talked about the effort of sleeping. It's a chance to just kind of walk away from that, stop trying to sleep, get your mind focused on something else until you're sleepy again, so that you're not putting that pressure on yourself. So that's one reason. And then the other reason, as you may know, because it sounds like you've heard about this recommendation before, is that you really want to try to create a bed in a bedroom that is not associated with insomnia or poor sleep. So if you've had a lot of poor sleep in your room or a lot of insomnia, it's you're going to have an association of your bed with insomnia or poor sleep. It's just that's what happens. So if you can get your insomnia out of your bedroom, if you can be like, okay, if I'm up in the middle of the night, I'm going to be in my living room, then you are unpairing your bed with insomnia. You're like unpairing that association in your brain. Because once you get that association, then I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but you can be really sleepy on your couch, get ready to go to bed. You go into your bed, and then boing, your eyes are wide awake. And it's like, what happened? I was so sleepy. I got in my bed and I'm totally awake and alert. And usually the reason for that is because your brain has paired your bed with a place of insomnia and stress and anxiety and all the things. So you get there and it's like, boom, your brain wakes up. It's sort of like on high alert. Am I going to sleep tonight or not? And that can be really frustrating. So getting up out of bed, if you've been awake for more than 20 or 30 minutes is reasonable too. Going to do something relaxing until you fall asleep. Most of the time, I do recommend that. So great, great question. That was, I hope I'm saying your name right, Marge. Thank you for asking that. That's a really important technique for most people. And the benefit of this program, and the reason I say for most people, is there's always individual um, tweaks to these recommendations. So, if there's an individual situation, then we might think about something different to do when they can't sleep. But in general, I think it is a good concept. All right. I was gonna look at these other questions from past webinars. Let's see. How much time does the program take each week? The modules are not too long, 10 to 15 minutes. So if there's two or three of them, it's probably less than an hour. You can listen to them. There's not a whole lot of slides with them, so you can just listen to them when you're going on a walk or driving, making dinner, whatever. And then the 1 hour weekly question and answer coaching. So I really try not to make it too much of a time commitment for people because I know most people are pretty busy already. Um, let's see. People often say, if I've had insomnia for years, can this still help me? Yes, yes, yes. Many, many patients I've worked with and many women I've worked with have had insomnia for years. I think I worked with this is a gentleman, but recently I worked with a gentleman who was in his 60s and had had insomnia since he was in his 30s and really was able to come out of that cycle and get much, much better rest. So the amount of time that you've had insomnia doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be any harder for you to find a new way. I think it just takes some intention, some specific strategies, and some support, and it's really usually very doable. Okay, other common questions. Oh, what if I can't make the question and answer sessions? I always will record them and send them out as replays. So if you don't get to attend live, then you can also send me your questions by email and I can answer them more in depth in the question and answer. But you can listen to everybody else's questions too. And I usually try to kind of bring things together and talk a little bit at the beginning of those question and answer sessions just to try to bring the topics from the week into a cohesive concept. Yeah, let's see. What other questions do people usually ask me? Yeah, so what if I already know all the sleep hygiene tips? How is this different? Lots of pieces of sleep hygiene are really excellent, but this, first of all the pieces of sleep hygiene have some kind of knowledge behind them. Usually, knowing science, knowing how your brain works, knowing these circadian rhythm concepts. So, just getting a list of sleep hygiene concepts can sometimes be overwhelming or confusing, but really understanding how sleep works and the theoretical underpinnings of why these concepts help is really important. Plus, we work on mindset, we work on restructuring negative thoughts that are really pulling us toward a really negative view of our sleep and catastrophization and all of those things. I do a lot of teaching on relaxation methods and practical strategies. And then what else is different is, again, you have the support, you have other women doing this with you, and you have some individualized guidance. So I think you will find if you decide to sign up for this, it's quite different than just getting, the general sleep hygiene tips. Um, it's really a journey we take together, and where you're supported and you're with other women who are going through the same thing. All right. So I'll wait for just a second to see if anybody else has any more questions. And I will send an email to those of you who stayed on till the end about the free coaching session winner. And otherwise, feel free. You can always send me an email with any other questions you have about this. I'll send a follow-up email to you all too, and you can